So, I have to say, after now watching, we're 5 episodes into Akiba Maid War, the concept of what a birthday would look like pretty much went, I would say at this point, where I expect. I mean, we're essentially watching a goddamn Mafia story with maids. They literally bring up turf wars, that's what we're dealing with here. There's, this town ain't big enough for the 10 of us with our different cafe styles, so Baba Black Sheep, you're gonna have to get a bullet to your head if you dare to share the same birthday. And the concept of putting Ranko, of all characters, in the spotlight of her she's turning 36, she says, already is immediately, you knew she was older than a lot of the characters in terms of the maids we've seen in this show. So you already knew, okay, the concept of, an older maid working at a cafe in general, there'd probably be some looks depending on where you go. Sure, some people would love it, but you could definitely see the natural pushback. Add in a Mafia story to it, you're just looking for an absolute salt in the wounds moment. But I love the concept that it actually was probably the nicest episode with the cafe. Honestly, the worst thing the manager did in this episode, ignoring the fake hostility of why would we give a shit about Ranko's birthday, which was just a sidestep so that they could throw her an actual surprise, she wouldn't expect it, of course. The worst thing she did was she took a bite out of the cake. And, I mean, all things considered, you can only go up. You've already been face first in the ground after 4 episodes of just pure lunatic, manipulative bullshit. So, to be honest, I'm kind of proud of the manager of this episode, but honestly, at this point, maybe I have Stockholm Syndrome similar to Nagomi, who now is just more or less saying, you know what, maybe killing for being a maid isn't what I want, but at this point, this is all I got to know. I like how you can take the most basic of ideas and turn them into something so much more compelling. And honestly, I would argue this episode's premise would be good in most slice of life shows if it was a normal maid cafe, because the concept of almost having a celebrity birthday, that's almost like what these maid cafes basically present them as. If you have a pop-in maid cafe and one of your maids is turning a new age, it's a celebration, you can just get a sense of that before shit hits the fan of how they're constantly saying happy birthday. And I've seen shows and I've read that this is a pretty common thing with maid cafes if it is something that they're trying to propel their kind of customers because, it's a celebration, come be part of my life, even though obviously you'll never get to touch me, let alone sleep with me. But that's the whole kind of concept of the maid cafes, right? It's you go in, you pay to have this overly maid service happen, even though nothing will ever happen, right? So I like how if you add that into a Mafia story, because these maids are going with turf wars, it becomes a lot more interesting, because then you get into the concept of you knew damn well as soon as they left that they were going to get jumped. It wasn't a matter of if, it was just a matter of when. You knew they weren't going to pull guns inside the moment when the one girl was like, oh, it's my birthday, ooh, you're old, ooh, these don't look nice. She was just honestly an outright capital C, but YouTube doesn't like that word, so I'll leave it to your imagination. But all things considered, you knew she wouldn't do anything there because it would ruin their reputation with the customers. So you would do it on the way home because they consider them filth and just sludge, so that's where they would attack them. But Ranko being Ranko, easily could have dealt with them all. Had Nagomi not been there, they all just would have ended up dead and she would have carried on her merry way. But unfortunately, Nagomi, not being the master killer just yet, did get a gun drawn on her. I honestly had no idea where we were gonna go though, because I truly thought it was blood. They kicked the episode off with her just basically sideways freaking out. It looks like blood. Turns out it's just tomato juice, which honestly, all things considered, when you show me a goat or a sheep or whatever you're gonna do with these animals, right? I thought maybe there was a lot of cutting of necks and filling with blood. I'm not gonna lie, I had the worst thought possible. I was getting into the Saw mindset, and instead they actually went fairly tame. But I guess it makes more sense if you're gonna fill a barrel that high, that you would probably do it with tomato juice. It's probably a lot easier to get than the bodies of all of your people, because it would just make your goddamn cafe stink like blood and shit. So it makes sense, but you can get blindsided very quickly in this show given how extreme it can get at a moment's notice. The thing that I like about it is that in a lot of ways, I would argue this was the most open and shut episode out of the 5. And what I mean by that is it had a general story setup, which was Ranko's birthday. It had its own episodic maid cafe that they dealt with. Obviously, they're not supposed to have conflict with each other given where they're located, But obviously, things happen when you share a birthday in a maid cafe. That's basically a Mafia story. But then you also have, like, the whole concept of how in debt they are, and their initial plan was to make, like, 1 million of these roses, and it's only 200,000 for each of us, put your back into it sort of a thing. And I like how it all kind of ties together in a satisfying way by the end, where you have Panda as leaving. I thought Panda was going to be, like, the key to this episode, and that maybe the Panda reveal would come sooner, because last week did confirm Panda is a human. So it is a costume, so it's going to be interesting to see where that goes, unless they wanted to go genetically mutated, but I doubt it. But I like how on the way out, there's like that giant box of money because of the previous birthday celebration, and you just have the manager. This might arguably be the scummiest thing, but honestly, given what we saw from this cafe, I was just completely fine with it. She didn't realize in the moment that they went and took care of that cafe because of what happened, so it just looks like the Panda stole a bunch of money, and she's like, you know what? Shh, they don't need to know sort of a thing. They make a lot of money. We can take it for ourselves. So I like how, over these 5 episodes, we've had a general progression of a slice of life mob story, just with a maid cafe finish to it. Literally, it functions no different than any goddamn Mafia story set in New York, whether we're set in a maid cafe, doesn't matter. It's all the same type of concept, different businesses, different gangs, and everything like that. But I love the concept that for episode 5 being arguably one of the simpler episodes and not quite as insane back to back. Started insane, got relatively tame, slice of life, and then kicked off into insanity. It really did feel like the most complete episode in a lot of ways, and for being now 5 episodes in, I've seen a lot to the show. And this is the type of anime that you could easily say, oh, the first couple of episodes, what am I watching? It's shocking. But now it just feels like it's trying to one-up itself with shock value. I really don't feel that way. Like, yes, they're constantly trying to find new crazy-ass ways for these maids to get into killing shenanigans. But with that said, it really doesn't feel like they're trying to one-up itself with the visual flair. If they were, that would have been tomato juice, that would have been blood, and I wouldn't be able to say what I'm saying here. But the fact that rather than it being blood, it's just, it realistically, like, they couldn't have that much blood unless they wanted to be pure anime or, a Saw villain or something like that. So I like the fact that the craziness is always there, and the insanity is always there, but the almost family dynamic of this cafe, you can understand how the Stockholm Syndrome of realistically any normal person looking in, walk out those doors. That is not the life for you. We shouldn't have turf wars. This shouldn't be what we're dealing with. It is completely lunatic level bullshit. But once you stay there, then the family dynamic starts going and you see how they get locked in. And if we're an anime watcher, it's fantastic. For a normal person living their life, absolutely one of the worst lives you could have, but bless them for making it. It's kind of like the manager, right? Without her, the show would be so much more boring. This was her nicest episode, but 1 through 4, she's the cause of everything, right? Like, she really is at the end of the day. And I love the concept that it does feel like they have each other's backs when it counts, and I think that's why even when the manager does do so much bullshit, they still stick with her, because at the end of the day, they all make mistakes in their own stupid way, and because they're involved in a Mafia movie, all things considered, that's what they have to deal with, sort of a thing. But either way, I leave another episode pretty impressed with Akiba Maid War. It may not be the most talked about show of the season, but it's definitely one of the most impressive shows of the season, if you ask me. But thoughts and feelings down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. You can also consider supporting the Patreon. We have exclusive live reactions over there, and you can also get video shoutouts like Jeremy Estrella is getting today, so I appreciate the support. So, until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.